Thank you so much for attending this afternoon. What a wonderful crowd. I was just telling the chief, we don't get this kind of attention in these chambers quite so often. And for a really good reason for today, the swearing in of Ernest Morales III, the new chief of the Metro Transit Police Department. You know, of all the leadership positions I think of, this is one of the most important in the Met Council. The chief is someone who not only understands law, that's important, but more important, or as important, really appreciates the needs, the desires, and the aspirations of the communities we serve, the employees, staff who are part of Metro Transit, and of course, the riders, our customers. It really takes a deep empathy of all of them. And already, Chief Morales has shown an empathetic approach toward bridge building and connecting wherever he has gone, even in this short period of time. Chief Morales, although he is fairly new to Minnesota, he brings a long history of law enforcement and nearly 30 years with the New York Police Department. Really an incredibly impressive record. Now, not that experience matters. Well, guess what? It really matters. And it matters that it is not just professional, but some of his own life experience. He's a father, a husband, a mentor, an athlete, and someone who has, in his own stories, overcome challenges which makes a difference in the work that he brings with him today. He's a fighter in a boxing ring, and I like to think that he's a fighter for transit, and he's a fighter for the peaceful, welcoming transit that we envision. The relationship between police and community has been strained in Minnesota in many places, and it's gratifying to know that that actually is one of the reasons that he is coming to Minnesota, is to really help us meet that challenge. So I'm confident Chief Morales will continue to rebuild the trust that we require to succeed. And frankly, we need inspiration and to inspire others to join this noble profession and help stand with us to meet the causes. So we have a lot of work to do. No chief can do this alone. And we're here today to celebrate and welcome someone who is pivotal in the roles as we go forward. So Chief Morales, thank you so much for joining the Metro Transit Police Department. And we have a little swearing in ceremony to do. So let's just do that. Okay, right. Over here. We're gonna go to get a
stand like right behind you. Oh, I'm so sorry. Shift over this one. That's terrific.
All right, ready? Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I do solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota.
that
I will support
I
the
will support the
Constitution,
Constitution of the United States and the state of Minnesota,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Chief of Police
I will faithfully discharge the duties of Chief of Police
to the best of my ability within and for the Metro Transit Police Department and the state of Minnesota.
to the best of my abilities within and for the Metro Police Department and the state of Minnesota.
Congratulations. One more, three. about a family? There we go. Just a family, without me. I'm family, but not. You're gonna say it?
Yes. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I definitely want to thank the Metropolitan Council for hosting this beautiful event, for each and every one of you for coming out. It's absolutely something special. More importantly, I want to thank Captain Rick Rates. If you could stand up and be acknowledged. He held down the Metropolitan Department throughout this process, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Helping a seamless transition. It's my honor to share this time with you all as I begin my time as the 9th Chief of the Metro Transit Police Department, a police department that is relatively new, but in its 30 years existence has become one of the largest and most diverse law enforcement agencies in the state, which is absolutely, truly impressive. Today, we have nearly 200 full and part-time officers, community service officers, and civilian staff who proudly serve our region on behalf of the Metro Transit Police Department. As chief, it's my duty to make sure each of these individuals feel supported and has what they need to do their best work. It's also my duty to challenge all of us to reach beyond where we are today. The challenges facing law enforcement, transit agencies, and metropolitan areas like the Twin Cities are immense. So much has changed over the past few years, and so much remains unknown about what lies ahead. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that I have a lot to learn. But in over 30 years in law enforcement, what I do know is that I cannot confront these challenges alone, especially now. As chief, I look forward to working with staff across Metro Transit and the Metropolitan Council, and I look forward to working with our many partners, the cities and the counties we serve, the peer agencies we work alongside, the service providers we call upon, and so many more. Together, I know we can make a real difference for our riders, for our staff, and the communities we serve. There's a long road ahead, but I stand before you today. I also acknowledge that we are at crossroads, that the issues we're facing must be treated with more urgency and more resolve, and perhaps any time more now than perhaps any time in our department's history. Stagnation is simply not an option. Today, I promise you all that I am committed to leading this department into the brightest chapter yet. And I promise not only to be a champion for our police department, but for the organization and the customers and communities we serve. I will do everything I can to make you proud. It is an honor to assume this responsibility and an honor to wear this badge. Thank you for placing your trust in me and for your continued support as we move forward together. Thank you.
And we have a few moments before the Met Council meeting begins, so we're here to greet the chief, and thank you again so much for coming. Great. And that was such a wonderful special event to have the swearing in. Thank you all for coming. This is the Metropolitan Council meeting, Wednesday, March 22nd, and I'll call the meeting to order. Our first item is approval of the agenda, which we don't need a motion unless anybody objects or has a correction. I'll assume the agenda is approved. But we will act on approving the council minutes from the meeting on March 8th. Is there a motion and a second for approval?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. All right, we're at the point of the agenda where we have a public invitation for a comment, and I believe we have a person, Tricia Severson, who is here to speak for 3 minutes on an item not on the agenda. So welcome, come to the podium and you can introduce yourself. And we look forward to hearing from you.
I sent in a note to speak to with Sean Chesky on the climate action plan. I sent a note to the public notice thing yesterday.
I'm sorry, we didn't get anybody to register. We will give you an opportunity to speak
Great.
if it's on something that is not on the agenda for today. Yeah, okay, I'll keep that in mind.
Good afternoon, council members, and thank you for having me this afternoon. My name is Tricia Severson. I represent Light on the Rail. I'm the branch founder. As you see in front of you, I did write a brief poem, which I'd like to read aloud to you. It's called Beauties on the Bus. What do you see as you sit and judge me? Is it anger, disgust, or a mild sympathy? Be careful, so cautious, and God help your soul, that you won't end up in this transient role. It could happen in minutes, be let go from your job, lose your home and your phone and your car. Oh, so sob. You end up in a place with some dirt on your face, with no sink or a toilet or privacy space. I ask what you see, am I equal or less? Do we judge one another by how we are dressed? There is one who is qualified, not me or you. He shall judge all of us by the things that we do. So be careful. The changes are now up to us. You can choose to see monsters or beauties on the bus. We all know there are problems on our public transportation system, which I've been writing for decades and decades. We all know they're not getting better. They're just getting worse. So this plan, which has been divinely given to me, this assignment, Light on the Rail, it has a lot of solutions. And some of these solutions here I've listed, which are reducing rush hour fares, which is a time that most of the community comes onto the trains because they are very cold and very hungry. They've been out all night, either seeking drugs or seeking a place to sleep, which usually isn't happening, so they usually stay awake all night. So reducing rush hour fares, increasing transfer times, which is actually rent for the day, which can add up to almost $20 a day for these residents to ride the light rail. For SNAP victims of abuse, trafficking, excuse me, I need my glasses, my real glasses. Victims of abuse, trafficking, and providing resources for drop-in centers, workforce and crisis nurseries with incentives for treatments. Redoing the handbooks of the streets, which is out of date. These folks rely on Wi-Fi, so we can provide street navigators, center hotlines, and hotspots, Wi-Fi stations with on-duty street advocates, trainings for emergency paramedics, CPR, Narcan administrations, trauma-informed de-escalations, mental health interventions, crisis service, shelter referrals, hospital points of contacts for inclement weather resources, legal aid, overdose equipment, harm reduction, clinic addresses, and mentorship programs, etc. We could provide Metro Transit drivers and dispatchers training programs and ride-alongs for volunteers and community members partnered with outreach specialists to assist officers in situations. We could have public forum reward recognition ceremonies to recognize community heroes and response efforts to raise morale. I think that's very important. We could have on-call and scheduled volunteers, train outreach professionals to meet up per database, which is in the future plan, at predestined platform and light rail locations after forecasting weather and rider numbers with necessary supplies. Street advocates should accompany HAT team and Metro Transit officers to all emergency incidents to ensure safety and protocols are being followed, as well as to provide support and compassionate treatment. All protocols should be followed through, and data collection should be maintained through ROIs and reporting systems. Personal safety should come first. Devices like knives and tasers are too life-threatening. Alternatives like self-defense training should be utilized, and pepper spray should be a last resort. Always wash perpetrator's eyes and face and take directly to the closest ER for care.
And you have about, maybe just wrap it up, 10 more seconds.
Yep, juvenile offenders should be given mentors and second chance programs initiated as opposed to gross misdemeanors and felonies. No more stopping trains causing employees to face consequences at jobs or job loss. Ventilation systems should be improved and smoke detectors improved to deter smokers. And a donor base should be established to assist with cost of items needed to serve the transient community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Yeah, please come forward and you can state your name and you have 3 minutes.
I'm Sean Gaszewski. I'm a resident of Corcoran neighborhood and work with resilient cities and communities. I first of all wanted to thank your police chief for coming out to the Corcoran neighborhood last night for our listening session on community safety related to the Midtown LRT and the Chicago Lake bus stop. A lot of really great creative ideas with the Hennepin County outreach on homelessness, working on many different aspects, and your aide was there too, Councilmember Brand. So the Corcoran neighborhood is excited to partner with the Met Council on helping to get rid of the fentanyl crisis right at the High Lakes station there. And then I'm also just have a note here for you guys, especially with your climate chair, Peter Lindstrom. This opportunity came up where the Met Council can apply for $1 million to do a planning effort with our Twin Cities region to gear up to do a climate implementation with the cities and counties in the metro area. And it could be maybe something that you didn't have on your work plan, but I definitely encourage you to go for it because the state could potentially get like $8 billion in implementation money for cities through the EPA. So there'll be a seminar on this tomorrow with the MPCA at noon if you want to learn about it. But I'm also excited this could be an opportunity for cities that don't have climate action plans to develop them using the new tool, the greenhouse gas scenario planning tool that Mauricio has developed. It'll also help on tying in your transportation planning, infrastructure planning. So anyway, this is a bit of background on it. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. With no other members of the public, we're on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Oh, Councilmember Wolf.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we had this committee report that I assume is related to the agenda item in the consent agenda. But the dates on the committee report are wrong unless we're doing time travel now because it's September of 2023. I didn't know if maybe we should correct that before we approve it.
You don't think our staff can see into the future quite that far? Very talented. So, thank you. With that correction to the date, we will go forward with the approval of the consent agenda with that friendly amendment that I think is a technical correction. General Counsel Ian will tell us we can't just.
No, I think you can do
You
that.
can, okay.
I did want to mention, Chair, that the committee report has been handed out to the council members, and there should be one available on the table as well. We did not have the opportunity to upload it to the website, so it will be uploaded to the website and connected to the business item for the public who is looking at the agenda later.
With the correct date.
With the correct date.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? All right, the consent business items are approved. On to the non-consent business items. There is one report from the Community Development Committee, 2023-37. Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is business item 2023-37. It's Nokomis-Hiawatha Regional Park Long Range Plan Amendment. And this is an issue that has generated a lot of community interest, a lot of community conversation and discussion, debate at the committee level as well. And so I feel like it's appropriate that we just take a moment and kind of go over the history of the project, and especially for our newer members, and who are kind of coming in at the end of an issue that's generated a lot of interest, the end of the process. But and then I would like to turn it over to Emmett Mullen, our parks guy, and he's going to talk some about our authorities and things. So hopefully all of our members will feel comfortable with where we're at and prepared to vote on this. And so just briefly, and then I intend to make a motion here, but just a quick summary, that the Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board submitted the Nokomis Regional Park Plan Amendment. This amendment provides for, or this plan provides for a wide range of recreational opportunities, including the golf course, the area immediately surrounding it. And so the current park includes an 18-hole golf course. The golf course was once the location of Rice Lake. It was water and connected to a wetland complex. The lake was dredged, the wetlands were filled in the 1920s. The golf course was designed and constructed in the early 1930s. A severe flood in 2014 led to the closure of the golf course and subsequent water management study and planning work. The proposed plan's preferred design includes the development of a 9-hole golf course, a driving range, practice facilities, and improved community gathering opportunities. The design strives towards a balance of golf and other activities set in a landscape guided by water management. It also includes a variety of multi-use and pedestrian trails, allowing for a complete loop around Lake Hiawatha and connections to the regional parks and neighborhoods, preserved open space on the northwest side of the site, protected wildlife habitat, and enhanced winter recreation opportunities. In addition, the plan provides the space and opportunity to celebrate the site's natural and cultural history. There was, as we like to say, robust discussion of the plan amendment at the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission and at our own Community Development Committee. There was a unanimous vote to support the amendment at Parks and Open Space Commission, and there was one dissenting vote at the Community Development Committee. Concerned and interested residents have been contacting us a lot, and the chair and I were just talking before this meeting, and I think this is probably the issue where I've had the most contact from the public, as I have in any time here at the Met Council, and that's a good thing, that people are paying attention to what we're doing. And so I'm gonna turn to Emmett in just a second, but I think to get this in front of us and to get the debate going, I'm just gonna move the approval of the Park and Recreation Board's Nokomis-Hiawatha Regional Park Long Range Plan Amendment, and also require Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, prior to initiating any project at this location, to send preliminary plans to the Metropolitan Council.
Thank you. Is there seconds? Thank you, Councilmember Vento.
And then, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I would turn to Emmett. Well, there he is. I know I just saw him.
Emmett?
And he's gonna just kind of talk to us about
Our official park guy.
the Pistol Park guy. I can't remember your full title. I didn't want to use it.
That's close enough.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and council members, and particular welcome, strong welcome to all the new members. My name is Emmett Mullen, and I am the Parks Unit Manager in the Community Development Division. And thanks for the opportunity to provide a short overview of the regional park system and the Metropolitan Council's role with long-range park and trail planning. This is a short introduction. I think Councilmember Lilligren felt it would be useful if I provide a little introduction to the topic, as well as a refresher for existing members. So before I get into it, I wanted to just say that we've moved away, council staff has moved away from the term master planning. The term master, which is often defined as commanding control or being really skilled at something, has a connection to slavery. And we've had early discussions with our park agency partners, and they were sort of unanimously saying, and they initiated the conversation, let's just go with long-range plan. And that sounds good. We'll tee that up for this broader discussion with the Regional Parks Policy Plan and the Regional Development Guide. But I just wanted, if there was any confusion as to why we're not calling it master planning, because the state statute calls it master planning, but that's not the topic of today's conversation. So first, what is the Regional Parks and Trails System? Here's a map of our interconnected system of regional parks and trails. And I know I say this, but I really think it's a beautiful map that shows sort of the connected nature of our parks and trails throughout the region. And it also, on the left-hand column, just lists under the term collaboration and cooperation, the 10 regional park implementing agencies. This is one of the council's 4 systems that we're charged with overseeing. The nuance with this system is that we don't own or operate any of the parks or trails. That is the local, or I shouldn't say local, the regional implementing agencies, starting at Anoka County and going all the way to Three Rivers Park District there. What distinguishes a regional park and trail system? I think of it as, in a simple-minded way, as having 3 really primary characteristics. They're really big, large acreage. The second is that it's natural resource-based. They're often associated with water, rivers and lakes. And finally, it serves a regional audience, meaning they're so awesome they draw people from a large area. That's the truth. So activities and facilities in a regional park or trail need to meet regional policies and serve a regional audience in order to be considered part of the regional system. And this second part is important, to be eligible for funding. In relation to the topic in front of you today, the Nokomis-Hiawatha Regional Park Long Range Plan, not all amenities and facilities in this regional park are regional activities. For instance, golf is not considered a regional activity. It's a local activity. And it's not eligible for regional funding. Not to confuse things, but in the wintertime, this very same facility supports winter activities like cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, winter hiking, and those are considered regional activities and are eligible for regional funding. So, what role does the Metropolitan Council play with the Regional Parks and Trails System? As I said earlier, we work closely with those 10 regional park implementing agency partners to support a world-class system. And it's true that we have a world-class system. One responsibility of the council is that we develop and implement the Regional Parks Policy Plan, which is our guiding document for the Regional Parks and Trails System. Related to this, and related to today's item on the agenda, we review park and trail long-range plans and plan amendments against the criteria that are included in the policy plan. This responsibility was delegated to us by the state legislature, and it's the 10 regional park implementing agencies that have the responsibility to develop the long-range plans. We're committed to working in partnership during this process, and it's sometimes like there's tension in this process too, because we're in a review role, and so I just wanted to call that out. Other council park responsibilities include we help fund the system. We actually have regional bonds that we put in. We often match state funding. We conduct research on the system. We do the annual use estimate, which we all love to see. Most recently, 64 million visitors. And we help protect the integrity of the system in a number of ways, but I think most predominantly through the review of comprehensive plans and plan amendments. We make sure that the regional parks and trails are mapped directly into those comprehensive plans so that our local unit partners can help us protect them. So, the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, I think, the legislature calls it an agency of the council, advises you on regional parks and trails issues. And more directly, the council relies on the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission to do this work, to vet the work of the park agencies. Some of the things, other things that the council does, the commission does, is reviewing long-range plans from the Metropolitan Council consideration, including this one, updating and revising the Regional Parks Policy Plan, as I already mentioned, and they review funding proposals, including land acquisition. What are the park and trail plan requirements in our policy plan? I just wanted to cover that briefly. The council's role with these long-range plans is to review them for consistency with regional policies. Our job isn't to say this is a good plan or a bad plan, but instead we measure the plans against the regional standards. We say this a lot, but we have a deep respect for local decision-making. Our role is not to weigh in on the operational details of how parks and trails are operated. And I'll just make a statement that even in this Nokomis-Hiawatha plan amendment, we don't weigh in on whether we like 18 holes or 9 holes. Like, that is something that's been worked through between the regional park implementing agencies and its residents. Instead, our role is to ensure that the agency plan is consistent with regional policies laid out in our policy plan. These things include things like boundaries. Are the boundaries clearly delineated? Are there acquisition costs? And if so, what are the parcel details? Did the agency conduct a demand forecast? Is there a clearly articulated development concept? Has the agency, I'll use your language, Commissioner Lilligren, conducted a robust public engagement process? There is an equity analysis that is required. This plan amendment, because it was initiated prior to the council adopting this equity requirement, they didn't formally do it, but I can give you confidence that equity was in the center of this planning. And there are a number of other factors. There's 14 in all for plans. In addition to providing strategic direction for the future of the area, the council approves the plan. Once it does, it becomes eligible for regional park system funding, which includes state funding. So with that, thank you for listening to me today, and I will pass it back to you for your action.
Thank you, Emmett. Appreciate that framework. Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to speak briefly in support. Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Hold on, I just had your title here, the Parks Manager and Community Development Division. I want to speak in support of the motion, and to first start by saying that we really honor and respect our local communities. That's the 10 parks implementing agencies to do their work, their local work, and that has been done in this case. Just to point out some of the challenges of this site, and we pump a lot of water off this site, a lot, and it's not really sustainable, it's not economical, it's not efficient, and it's not ecologically sound. We can't continue to pump that much water off of this site. This has been an opportunity to engage local communities, to reimagine the area, and I think that's been done. And we've come to this compromise position, or I guess I should say the Minneapolis Parks and Rec Board has come to this compromise position, and as is the case with a lot of compromises, people on both sides aren't 100% happy, and they're letting us know that, and I appreciate that. But I think given the opportunity for improved water management, the restored ecosystem, greater access to a wider array of amenities for the region, and the retention of at least part of the site as a golf course, I support this action, and I would ask my colleagues to support it as well. And I do apologize that almost half the council is new. There's been a lot of process here. And we're kind of coming to the final vote on, I think this is your first official council meeting, isn't it? Or maybe second. So I apologize for that, but I would ask for your support in this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Bento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just give a brief recap of the conversation that occurred among the members of the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission. The commissioners really, truly did have that kind of a conversation. I won't use the R word again, but it was just that. And I want to note that they posed numerous questions about funding, enterprise facilities, regional park activities, and public and stakeholder engagement. They dug deep into the discussion around the history of the 18-hole golf course and the importance of the 18-hole golf course to many in the Black community, and they are very, had quite a discussion about that. And it was very candid, very thoughtful, and really they took their time. They expressed concerns about water quality, as Councilmember Lilligren noted, and quantity issues, and acknowledged the anger and frustration that many are feeling about the reduction from 18 holes to 9 holes. I want to note a message earlier today. As council members, we received an email from Anthony Taylor. Anthony is a member of the Metropolitan Parks and Open Space Commission, but I first met him as we were both members of the Governor's Council for an Age-Friendly Minnesota, and I quickly learned in those meetings that when in doubt, listen to Anthony, because he'll get you to the right place. And Anthony did that the evening that the commission had this conversation. He spoke very eloquently that evening, and he spoke eloquently in his email to us today. And the one sentence that really stands out to me, and I think it's important for us to remember, he said, and I quote, "I value relationships with members of the Bronze Foundation community and have a vision for environmentalism, active living, and inclusive outdoor space that is also a deep value." And I think the whole community will benefit when we address the environmental issues that exist. It won't be an 18-hole golf course, but it will be a better 9-hole golf course. And if I ever take up golf again, I can assure you that you won't find me near an 18-hole. I'll be at the 9-hole. And I'll forewarn everyone, because I had a FIAD teacher in college who was a little alarmed with my swing. I thought I was taking an easy class to get my FIAD requirement done, and I learned that I wasn't, even though I come from a family of golfers. I want you to know that this has not been an easy discussion, that there has been a lot of thought put into it, and that the commission unanimously recommended this item to us, and I would ask you to support the commission's work on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just, I think it's really important. I know when I was first sworn in as a city council member, we were given instructions through the League of Minnesota Cities and our city attorney, and that is, what is your role in this decision? It always is good to know what is our authority and what is our role. And Mr. Mullen touched on this, but I think it's really important with comprehensive planning. There comes a role. So we have our highest authority when we're in our legislative mode, and that's when it comes to our own policies and our language. That's where we have the most authority granted to us by the state of Minnesota, where we can be those big thinkers. But once those plans are in place, or we have statutory direction, we end up in a quasi-judicial mode, and that's where our authority is very tightened. And if what is coming before us meets what is required, we must then grant it. And I know that really is hard for some folks to hear, but what it's really doing is acknowledging the process that comes before us where there was higher authority. So the Minneapolis Park Board here, in their legislative authority, had the highest control, and that's where the most robust public input really needs to take place. And I know here, in my 4 years as a council member, that even is hard for me sometimes when you think, oh gosh, I don't know if I would have supported that. But I'm not wearing the Minneapolis Park Board hat today. I'm wearing a Metropolitan Council hat. So I think that, given all the process and everything that is coming before us tonight, if you love the plan, if you hate the plan, if it's something in between, that's lovely. But our job tonight is to make sure that it meets all of the criteria that it must meet, which it does, and it has gone through the process. And therefore, for me, I really want to say, as much as I truly appreciated all of the input, I couldn't get back to everybody with an email, so I wanted to explain tonight. My vote will be yes, because I think it is the right thing to do based on the role that we have and the authority that we have, and also the robust process that this went through. And again, just appreciate the intensity. This was the #1 issue in the 4 years I've been on the council that I've had this much input in it. It meant a lot to me. But my vote will be yes.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you, Emmett, for giving us that background information. I am on the Community Development Committee and reviewed the information, and at that time, I felt I needed more information. So I was a dissenting vote in that meeting. Since then, I have gotten a lot of information in terms of what the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board has done, the level of community engagement, what is within our jurisdiction and what is not within our jurisdiction. But I also know that one of our goals has always been to work with our partners in our implementing agencies. With our Thrive goals and our equity goals, sometimes that goes beyond what is within our, statutory jurisdiction. So I think that's what makes this so challenging. As a person who is from that neighborhood, I grew up in the neighborhood right across the street from Bancroft Elementary, right off 38th Street, 6 blocks from George Floyd Memorial. I remember when the Cup Food Store was a pharmacy that I used to go walk to as a child. So this neighborhood, including the Hiawatha area, means a lot to me. And I also value the history behind its usage for all communities, including the African American community. And I appreciate this opportunity to highlight what has been working very well for all communities, and also the African American community that historically has felt that there have been some wrongs for racial reasons, and it's been documented with the redlining and the racial covenants, the enforced segregation that resulted. So a lot of times when we get to review the engagement pieces, we're going to hear those things, and we're going to acknowledge those things, and we're going to say, this is what, as council members, our personal stand on this, but this is what we must do as council members within our authority. So I really, agree with all the other council members that said, we appreciate all of the feedback that we have gotten from community members, from advocates, from church groups, from neighbors around that area, from environmentalists that are concerned. We all have a stake. We're all stakeholders. And I hope that we're able to be good partners with our implementing agencies and lend a hand, because we offer research. We offer a framework for equity that we can engage with them. I this is a really hard one because it really hits home. But where does the work need to be done? I think that's the question that I'm interested in knowing at this point. How can we be partners with our agency in those, also the other areas that are important to us in terms of helping to develop thriving communities, helping to advance racial equity, helping to make sure that we have a strong environment, and then that our environment helps people with their well-being by cross-country skiing or golfing or whatever it is. So I appreciate the opportunity to see what is happening with our implementing agency and what they have done. It does look like they did very good, robust engagement, but I always look for more in terms of engagement, including what were the numbers? How many people did you reach? What were their main issues? Did you kind of break that down? Do you think this is going to be a hot button issue? And that will be determined sometimes how deep you go with your questions and your as an implementing agency. I'm gonna withhold from making a decision about this until I see that there aren't any comments from other council members.
Okay, Councilmember Pacheco.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the council members. You know, I was called by a community member about this issue. It wasn't even on my radar for years. I'm not I tell those people I'm a COVID golfer. Nothing I go is about 6 feet. It's about it. So it's, so it wasn't something I do. But as they're looking into it and reading the story, and it was an African-American, gave me the real history of what he felt about this. And so I came to the, I'm not on the Community Development Committee, came to the meeting. Appreciate the fact that Chair Lilligren allowed me to speak and to participate in the meeting. I thought it was a great discussion. I respect the work that the park board members, the park open space here members put through. They've been studying this for a long time. And but I respectfully disagree. I think that there was, sometimes we're going to be faced with a decision where it's environment or development, or environment and history, or history and development. These things come up, but we have to, you know, face them and look at what we really believe in here. And I think, you know, in some ways, we've kind of passed this, the history of this and kind of greened over it, if you will. And I think we should take a step back and look at it, and especially in the area of equity. The response from the Parks and Open Space was that you passed your equity rules and initiatives after we already did our plan, so somehow we're not affected. So somehow they were grandfathered in to not being able to do anything because of our equity thing wasn't passed until after they got this. And so I don't know that how robust of an equity effort was made. We asked about the dollars amount, because in here, if you see the document, when you've seen it, I've heard $43 million to put this together was put out. The chair asked that question. I asked that question. They said it's not in this request. I guarantee you it will be an A request. Maybe not in this one, but there will be an A request. I also grew up in South Minneapolis. Nokomis was my home lake, as we all have our own home lakes in Minneapolis there. And so I went over there, and I've been up and down that street running around and I really like the parks and what we're doing there. So I'm obviously going to vote against it. I think at this point, I think there's a compelling reason to keep it a 18 hole. 9 hole and 18 holes are two different animals. You can't get your handicap going here. You can't have a tournament that raises funds to keep you going without having 18 holes. I mean, I think, anyway, but I don't think just the number of holes also dictates what's going on. There is a history here. I've heard it said, and it's probably overstated, but when you bring up Rondo and what happens there, what it costs now to come back and maybe fix something you could have done earlier, cheaper, better. So anyway, I'm voting against, but I will again, I appreciate the debate we had in the committee. I respectfully disagree with the park forest, but I appreciate their work. Quite frankly, I appreciate anybody who's willing to do public service these days and come and do the work that they do. So I'm in no ways insulting or letting them know that but I respectfully disagree, and I'll disagree again when it comes back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Councilmember Tony Carter.
All right, thank you. I also very, very much appreciate all the work that has been done up until this point and the decision that is before us today, the thoughts that council members have shared with respect to having seen this move along the way, ending up where it is today. As a new member, I've held my comments to hear and to absorb what has been happening to this point. Also, as a member familiar with local government and with an appreciation for local decision-making, I hold a lot of empathy for all of the work that has been done and for respecting all of the talent and effort and energies of all involved. As a member of this community, having lived in the South Minneapolis area myself, but even more so knowing so many who have come out of that era and history and understand the importance of the golf course as an 18-hole golf course, as a manner of bringing African American people into the golf tradition and spreading the ability for individuals in that community to enjoy golf, and acknowledging that it is not simply golf, but it is about so much more with respect to respecting people and engaging people equitably throughout the community. I recognize the importance of this work, and I have heard from a lot of people and also have not had the ability to respond, being inundated with the issue and really needing to parse through all of the considerations, or not all of the consideration, but as many as I could over a very short period of time. I stand here today, or sit here today, wanting to know, as this comes to us for approval, without, at least now, a request for funding, and knowing that there are huge divisions, in fact, a great schism in between what appears to be an acceptable resolution for the parks and what appears to be acceptable to the African American community represented in its desire for an 18-hole versus a 9-hole course. And feeling as though I need additional time, perhaps not everyone here does, but feeling as though I do, I must ask the question, what would happen should we make a motion to delay this decision? What would be the result of that today? Should we feel as though we need additional information in order to assess this against the council's equity goal and framework today, although it was not available in the last year when this was moved forward? If we wanted to do that today and to hear from community, I am not asking only, although I'm the one that feels I need it for me, I'm asking if in fact this council and even the Minneapolis Parks and Recreation Board could, needing the support of community to move forward, hear additionally from community within a short period of time. We know we won't heal the 9 versus 18 divide. But can we hear what a win-win could conceivably look like from some elements in the community? So I'll return to the question, and I imagine that there are council members who might respond to that. Certainly, we have staff here who might share, at least from our perspective on the Metropolitan Council staff, what the result of a delay would be, and perhaps even from the perspective of the Parks and Rec Board. So I rest my comment with the question.
Thank you. Councilmember Lilligan, you would have picked that up?
I would actually, Mr. Chair, maybe request
Emmett.
staff, and we also have representatives from the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board as well. And since they generated a lot, well, they generated this amendment, I would might ask them, and then I would be happy to comment, but.
Thank you.
Emmett, thank you for returning.
Thanks, Chair Zelli and Councilmember Carter, for the question about delay. I just wanted to say one thing about the equity analysis requirement, because this was a requirement that was adopted in December of 2020. And that was well after the planning was initiated. So the park board had no idea what we were going to develop. That said, I can tell you, as I understand this planning process and in my conversations with park board staff, they have met the spirit of the equity requirement. And I say that with a simple sort of notion of what the equity requirement is. It is basically what is the area that you're looking to plan for, and who are the underrepresented communities in this area. So once you identify them, you say, okay, well, now we have to go out and talk to them, whether it's through focus groups, public meetings, citizen advisory committees, going directly to groups like the Bronze Foundation. And the park board did that. And then they learned a lot, and they still put forward a plan to say, let's retain golf as the primary activity of this area, yet we also need to deal with some significant water management concerns. And I'm not laughing because it's funny, but like this golf course is in a really tough spot in the Minnehaha watershed district. It finds itself downstream from Minnetonka, the Minnehaha Creek runs from Lake Minnetonka to the Mississippi River, and it goes through Minnetonka, Hopkins, St. Louis Park, Edina, and South Minneapolis. And it is a really suburban and urban area, and a lot of water. When it rains hard, there's just a big inundation of water in the creek. And the golf course, the Hiawatha Golf Course, finds itself at a pinch point in the watershed, and it is prone to flooding. And so there isn't a lot it can do on its site to ameliorate that, because the problem doesn't reside in where it is. It's really upstream. So I'm giving you probably more than you need to know, but I wanted you to know that there was some real trade-offs, and I feel like the park board has been at this for, I think it's 8 years, this planning process. So would a delay hurt? I think that I'd have to ask the park board to speak to that. Like, I don't think that this doesn't like flip the switch to trigger funding, but it makes them eligible for funding. So you're right. So I don't know if any of that helped, but I wanted to provide that.
Yeah, Councilmember Vento.
Thank you, Emmett. I just want to add that I think from an environmental standpoint, there would be a problem with delaying. I think the longer we wait, the longer it's going to take for the park board to be able to move forward with this plan. And environmentally, it is needed. And it's going to be a rough spring and summer in a lot of places in Minnesota. We hear about the sandbagging preparation that's going on in Stillwater. And I worry for the people in South Minneapolis. We've had increasingly traumatic storms that bring just immense rainfall. So I think from an environmental standpoint, we're obligated to move forward. And I would ask the council to move forward tonight.
And you're looking, do you have a comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. I think it might be helpful for you all to hear the statute that you're operating under. Just so, there's been some reference to it, but I think it could be useful to hear. It's Minnesota Statutes 473.313, subdivision 2, which addresses council review. And it says the Metropolitan Council shall review with the advice of the commission each master plan or long-range plan to determine whether it is consistent with the council's policy plan. If it is not consistent, the council shall return the plan with its comments to the municipalities, park district, or county for revision and resubmittal. So it's kind of two pieces. One, look at it, is it consistent with the policy plan? And if you want to say no, then you have to identify how it's inconsistent so that they can address that, and we would send it back to them. So I think that's an important piece for you all to understand, so I appreciate the
Thank you
indulgence.
for that clarification. Councilmember Johnson, then Chambliss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things. In local government, when reviewing comp plans, we had a deadline that we were up against. Do we have deadlines here that we're up against for the applicant? Because that usually also dictates time allotted for postponing for date certain. Do we have a deadline in statute or time frame by which we receive it and it has to be acted on?
I would defer to council, but I think we're held under the same laws that comprehensive planning is, so I don't know exactly what those are. I wish.
I want to be mindful of that. And again, I'm just talking from city world. You have 180 days to review. If you don't grant it within 180 days, and that's, I think that is allowing the applicant to even give you an extension, they automatically get what they want if you don't act by the deadline. So that's something we always have to keep in mind. So I don't know what the answer is, but I'm just raising it because that was always something that we thought of in local government. Gosh, if we don't act on it tonight, what does that mean? But we usually had deadline on the top of our report. The other thing I just want to mention, and this really was, I think, some really good comments that Councilmember Chambliss made at our community development meeting, and that is, how do we ensure that if this moves forward, that the healing will take place and the engagement will take place and the repairing of the hurt, and how is that going to come in to play? Because even if this moves forward tonight, there's a lot of work to do yet with community. And I thought of this, and I think I mentioned it at the meeting, but they will come back for money. And I said I would like to see what that plan is in the application when they come back for the money. I think we're not working in the same statutory authority as we are when we're reviewing grant applications. So I think that for my vote, I'm agreeing that this is going to move forward. There will still be voices in it. The park board will have to work with people going forward. And when it comes to us, we can continue to ask, and what was that process? And I think for me, I'm signaling that's what I'm going to be looking for. And that's why I feel tonight, I know tonight for me, that we must follow state law. With that said, we have a relationship with them, and they're going to want some support down the road. And they know we do have an equity policy in place. So I just put that out there as another moment for us to consider, where does this continue to go until we reach the end point where it's built and people are using it in the future.
All right, thank you. Reva, do you have a comment?
I'll defer to Councilmember Tyrone Carter. He has had his hand up, but I think you were looking that way.
Well, I was looking at the two of you, and I know Councilmember Wolf after that, but Councilmember Carter.
For me, as a boy, I used to caddy in the public courses because African-American golfers weren't allowed to play in the private courses. And so the caddies could only caddy in the public courses. And so I saw that discrimination. And yesterday I went down to the golf course because I wanted to see it. And, I read the history of Solomon Hughes. And I know the history of Charlie Sifford, who's another counterpart of his. And it struck me, and being a science teacher and teaching science and engineering to kids, I was struck by the balance, in terms of the water. And, whenever you have a swamp, it always wants to revert to being a swamp, and you have to have good pumping systems. And And maybe initially that wasn't done when it was first created, because maybe our knowledge has moved along that timeline. And so to me, and I thought, well, here, Solomon Hughes. This is a Solomon-like decision because there's no clear-cut answer, and so you need to have an answer that addresses both. There's a cultural memory of I-94 and what happened in Rondo. And so there's always going to be PTSD around that. So I think that's part of what we're hearing, because I got a bunch of emails. I'm sure a lot of other people did. And so so we have to really honor this in the right way. And so for me, I need to know that we're not going to sweep under the rug the whole idea of the equity aspect of it and really honoring what that golf course represented to so many people, and even going back to, the Native Americans harvested rice and waterfowl from that site. So, I mean, there's a lot of BIPOC, concerns, but definitely I want to know that they come back with a good plan in the end, saying that they're going to honor the history of that site and not just brush it under the rug because we want the money and we want to get this thing done. This is the most diverse council that maybe we've ever had, I don't know. So there's a reason for that. So we have a charge and we have to take that seriously. And when you come back for the money, we want to see something really specific, because if you don't, maybe I'm one person, but I'm one person that's going to say no. Now, I would have to say yes, because this is, to me, a kind of a 50-50 kind of decision. And you want to at least save the 9-hole course and have something there. But going forward, we want to know that we didn't get bamboozled again.
Right, comment, Wendy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to thank Councilmember Johnson for her discussion of the various roles and the clarification from Ms. Bloodhart, because we don't have a lot of leeway here on what we can do. If they meet the rules, we have to say yes. And on the funding part of it, we don't fund golf courses. That's out of their enterprise fund. We fund the natural things, but we don't fund golf courses. So a big part of that 43 million, or however much it ends up coming, we have nothing to do with. That's money that is the park board's tax levy or money from golfing fees or other things like that. They're not going to be coming back to us and asking for money for the golf course, because we don't fund the golf course. And furthermore, we have formulas that distribute the money in the park fund to each agency based on population and how many acres and different things like that. And then it's their decision how they want to spend it. We don't give them more money just because they came up with another park idea. They get their piece of the pie and they prioritize it themselves on all of those other natural things, not the golf course, but just on the natural things. And they have local control over what they're going to spend on. If it's in a long-range plan, then they can spend their share of the money on that. So they're not going to be coming back to us and saying, we want money to build a golf course, because like I said, we don't fund golf courses, and they get their money by formula. So they may take it from a different park. That's their local decision to do, prioritizing which park gets money first. But they're not going to be coming back to us with a more detailed plan and asking for more money, because we don't do that. I really appreciate Councilmember Vento's comments about Anthony Taylor. Anthony is a rock star on the Parks and Open Space Commission. I was the liaison to the commission for 8 or 9 years and learned so much from him. He has a passion for equity and really thinks deeply through the issues. And I really appreciated his letter that he sent out. I thought it was very thoughtful. Because ultimately, it's not the dirt that matters, it's the ideas and the culture. And there is no way to continue to have an 18-hole golf course on there. The DNR is not going to let them keep pumping water that fast because they're pumping way, way more water than they were ever permitted to do. So something has to change. It's not a matter of do you like it or not. Like if they meet the rules, and they did meet the rules, and spending more time isn't going to change anything. They've been arguing for 8 years over this plan. So if we give it another 2 weeks or another 6 months, nobody's going to change their mind. They're locked in, and they've come up with what they think is the best compromise, and I respect that. I respect that local authority. So I will be voting in favor of this, and that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to my colleagues for this debate, this respectful debate about things that can actually kind of painful, and I really want to thank Councilmember Tyrone Carter for sharing of his experience. I mean, that can be painful, right, revisiting that. And thank Councilmember Tony Carter for bringing up her issues and concerns, and really to support what Councilmember Wolf and others have said. We have the information in front of us that we need to execute our role and authority. We have the record to review, and so we have the record as it came from the Parks Board. It's gone through other approval processes through our own Parks and Open Spaces Commission, which I think has the unique attribute of being our sole commission or advisory group that is statutorily defined and statutorily established, and that was important to the legislature because resources, funds flow through this pipeline as well. And so we have a body that does a lot of this work for us. And so, Councilmember Carter, Tony Carter, I am so sympathetic to the fact that you're brand new. This is a hot issue, and we're asking you to make a decision tonight. And I'm sympathetic to your desire for more information. I'm sure you reviewed the record, but the biggest concern and the biggest reason I feel like we should move forward, and Councilmember Wolf just hit on this a bit, is if we postpone it, I feel like it builds a lot of expectation in the community that we know is paying a lot of attention to this, that something will change. And as Ms. Bloodhart has laid out for us, our general counsel, to do that would mean returning this back to the park board. It would create kind of a statutory debate whether we can even do that. We have to be clear what we want them to do, and I feel like with the record we have to review at this point, even if we haven't had a ton of time to review it, nothing is going to change within that record. And so I feel like we should. It's somehow. I think it's kinder maybe to the community to be clear about our intention. I've been in elected office as well, and I've had that experience that what a delay can mean. And it really means we're delaying this to do something different. And if that's really not what we're doing, I feel like I wouldn't want that to happen to me out in the community. And so I am sympathetic to where you're at, very sympathetic. And I agree with the comments that I made, and Councilmember Tyrone Carter brought this up as well. And a funding application for something will follow this at some point, and we'll have an opportunity to review that. And as we're setting this expectation, I know that the Minneapolis Park and Rec Board is listening to us, and we will want to see what they are doing to acknowledge the concerns that are being raised at this council. And I don't know this, and I usually don't say things in public that I'm not 100% sure of, but I'm willing to hear. But our role, and Councilmember Johnson hit on this, is not as statutorily limited when it comes to awarding grants. I think that's fair to say. I'm looking to Ms. Bloodhart to see if she's freaking out.
Councilmember Wolf probably knows.
Right, and so I would still urge us to move forward together. Again, it's not a perfect moment, but I think it's an important one for us to move forward, to be clear with the communities that we're serving what the intent is here. Thank you.
Great. Wendy, do you have a clarifying comment?
I do, Mr.
Okay, and then we're going to hear from Councilmember Chambliss.
Okay. So the one place we do have broad discretion in funding is our equity grants. They are a competitive grant to work on those sort of things that we would like to see them work on. And this would probably be a very competitive application if they did put something in about the Gulf situation and working on equity. They would be very likely to get funded. So that is a place where where they may be coming back asking for money and we can say yes or no. The base building of parks, we don't have that so much. But those equity grants are very competitive and we do have some say in where they go, just based on the way that the application is funded and scored. So that will be an opportunity to take a bite at that particular apple.
Great. Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you for that clarification, because I was going to respond that they could be coming back in a different way, and then also acknowledging that this regional long-range plan for Hiawatha is presented as a multi-use plan. So the funding could come for those purposes as well, and has in the past. So I just wanted to add that note. You know, I really think that the council wants to acknowledge and recognize the African-American history with golfing, and we've heard a lot of people talking about the great loss and historical harms that were related to African-Americans in terms of the policies that were inequitable. And I understand, you know, we've gotten a lot of information about what's in our statutory authority here before us today concerning this amendment, and that this amendment looks to meet the statutory requirements. And but we also today, for many of our council members, want to address our Thrive 2040 goals to partner with our implementing agencies and partners in the regional system and support efforts for racial equity in park systems and remedying the harm and making sure that we get things right when we are advancing policy and making policy decisions. It's a really tough decision that we're making today because we feel the heart of many of our community members, whether it's the environment, whether it's the neighbors. They reviewed 3 different proposals. The implementing agency did, and they put forward this amendment regarding what is before us. I'm an optimist. I think that we can partner with the agencies, as has been stated, and we can make things better together. And so with that, I'm going to move to accept the amendment for the proposed business action. But I also want to amend it to include a third action. And that is that even though the council finds the proposed Nokomis-Hiawatha Regional Park Long-Range Plan Amendment consistent with policies, we want to send the message that we encourage the Minneapolis Park and Recreation work with and partner with the community to address the needs, including the loss, and honoring the history that we've heard about today. So therefore, I'd like to ask the council to accept this amendment to the business item as I've proposed.
Second.
Second, and as a proposer, that's acceptable. Thank you. Does anybody have any comments on the amendment to the business section? Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Chair, I really appreciate that. We cannot mandate them to do anything, but we're sending a very strong message.
Yeah,
and I think that as it relates to the equity grant, as it relates to future process, and I think, again, I really want to commend Councilmember Chambliss and CDC in starting this thought process, because there's something that's sitting there that is unresolved yet. And I think that you're right. We would bring our best selves forward to partner and support in whatever way we could. So that's why I'm seconding it. I would say, though, we can't force them, but I think they're hearing us. And I think it's a good advisory amendment.
Well, thank you, and really kudos to council members here for this robust conversation. We have some really important transit reports, so I'm going to encourage us to consider this amendment, which is, I think, very thoughtful, and I understand kind of hits the spirit of those that have advanced the idea that we need a business item to be approved, but also knows that we need to send a message, not a mandate. Did you have a final comment?
Just wanted, Mr. Chair, just wanted to note that there was a robust thumbs up from Mr. Peterson from the Minneapolis Parks Board. He's heard everyone. He's been paying very close attention to the
Thank you, Mr.
conversation.
Peterson. Okay, with that, there is an amendment on the floor to the business item that has been motioned and seconded, and hearing no more discussion, I'm kind of, my dictatorial self is jumping in. I will call for a vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed. That was for the amendment, which brings us to the business action. So is there any other quick comments for this, Councilmember Carter?
Very quickly, and I appreciate your dictatorial movement on. I thank also Councilmember Chambliss for the amendment. It is with an eye toward the spirit of the letter that we received from Anthony Taylor that I've supported the amendment, and that I will also support the motion to move forward, lacking a need to give false hope. Thank you very much for this robust discussion to all of you.
Great conversation. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? This motion and as amended has passed. Which brings us, there are no reports from the Environment Committee, no reports from the Management Committee. There were reports from the consent agenda, and we are now having a quarterly update on our various transitway projects, recognizing that this is a real-time presentation. Some of our staff are heading to Maplewood to discuss the Purple Line. So, however, Nick Thompson, you would like to choreograph this presentation, so some of you might leave early. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chair, council members, thank you. Nick Thompson, Deputy General Manager, Capital Programs at Metro Transit. This is the first of 4 quarterly updates on transitways that we'll be providing to the council this year. This is a new step we're taking. Transitways, we feel, are very important to the council, of interest to all council members. So instead of presenting at just Transportation Committee, we like to provide a quarterly update. We are going to have some of us leave at 5:30 for the Purple Line meeting. So I'm going to go through my portions of it, then turn it over to the rest of the team. We are not going to present on Purple Line tonight, as there's been some changes that we've learned from our county partners today, and the information that we have in there, I think we need to update before we provide it to you. So we'll be skipping around a little bit from the order in order to allow some time, the right time. So tonight, the 4 transitways that are generally part of the quarterly update are the Gold Line, Green Line Extension, Purple Line BRT, and the Blue Line Extension. This map you have there is the Metro system, and the Metro system is our all-day frequent transit services that we're in the middle of building in our region. That includes the 4 projects, but it also includes our arterial BRT network. Several of our Metro systems are already online and operating to the public. So the Green Line, the Blue Line, the Orange Line, the Red Line are all part of this Metro network. So we're providing an update on the major transitways that are in process of development. Just a little bit of background on the BRT, because you will hear about one now tonight, a dedicated BRT, but we have arterial BRT, which will provide a robust update to you this summer about the program. We have highway BRT, which the Orange Line and Red Line fall within. Orange Line opening in 2021, and then we have our dedicated guideway BRT, which are the Purple Line and Gold Line. So there are 3 different types of BRT systems on our network. And then we have LRT, which obviously you're very familiar with. Oops, I'm gonna scroll through this. So each of those BRT systems are built off a story of different needs. The arterial BRT is really replacing a core local transit local bus system that has been in place for years, and upgrading the system to make it faster, more reliable, some of the conveniences of off-board fare payment and other items like that. Our highway BRT are often places where we had buses on shoulders. We had places that were not very good for customers to board. The middle picture is the access to what was a bus route on 35W. Not accessible, very unsafe, very poor in the winter conditions. So we've upgraded that. And then our gold line and purple line are very similar in nature to an LRT system and how they're designed and operate. This is a map that'll be very important to you as a council member, particularly in light of a new policy that was adopted last year, the Transway Advancement Policy. It's important to understand where these projects are in a process. You will see these projects both as the MPO and planning organization, but also as the council overseeing the Metro Transit and the organization that's implementing and building these projects and operating. So there's these key phases. And when we move between phases, those are big times for big decisions about whether to advance a project or not. So tonight you might hear references to where these projects are in what phases, either project development, engineering, construction phase, which is obviously in operations. These are phases that are designed around how funding occurs, how decisions are made, and they're guided through an FTA processes. But this is very important to begin to learn and understand these phases because we'll come to you for major decisions as we transition between phases. Organizationally, if you're new to the council, we set these 4 projects up in independent project offices that are led by project directors. Some of our project directors are here tonight. But these are multi-agency project offices. The gold and purple line share an office in Ramsey County facilities about a block from here. The Met Council staff is the lead of that, but it's deputies are from our county partners. We have MnDOT partners, consultants within these project offices. Our blue and green line offices in St. Louis Park, sharing office space. We often share staff between these projects. So these have very complicated org charts, but they're really, the color coding here is the different agencies that are represented in delivering these. They're led by a project director. Importantly, they each have their own governance structure too. And so if one of these transitways is within your council district, you'll be part of a governance process, either through a policy committee with our county partners. Sometimes we have an executive change control board that makes decisions about funding increases or changes in a project. Each project has a little bit of different governance structure depending on what we've agreed to with our funding partners. But you'll start to see, if you have one of these, you'll have meetings that will occur related to governance that you'll be part of as we guide these projects through their very long process for developing a project. I'm going to skip engagement, and Sophia will come back to that. There is a lot of engagement on this. And we'll come back to Gold Line too. I'm gonna make you dizzy going back and forth there. Green Line. So Jim Alexander is our project director for Green Line Extension. Jim was unavailable this week, so I'll be covering the Green Line Extension, also known as the Southwest LRT. Just the basic background with all of these projects is, where is this project? This goes from downtown Minneapolis to Eden Prairie on both freight rail lines and shared lines through Hopkins, Minnetonka, St. Louis Park, and Eden Prairie. This is our largest infrastructure project currently occurring in the state. It exists of tunnels. You'll hear a lot about tunnels, too much about tunnels. Bridges. It's not just a transit project. It's a freight project. It's a pedestrian project. It's a road project. And it covers council district 3, 5, 6, and 7. So this project current budget is $2.384 billion. Early last year, we identified that an additional $450 to $550 million of additional funding is needed for this project. We have secured since that time a significant portion of that project funding, but we still have a gap of funding of about $270 million. This project, if you have not been out there, a lot of this project is complete. Over 70% of this project is built. A lot of it looks complete and done. Some of the stations look done. And in 2023, we're going to make huge advancements on the development of this. The big remaining task will be completion of the tunnel in the Kenilworth corridor, which that will not be completed till 2025. But we believe that will be in operations no later than 2027. So the pie charts here represent the different funding sources that we have. Hennepin County and the county's Transportation Improvement Board, a former board, are the major local funding partners here. These projects are a huge job and business development projects also. We have a large DBE and workforce participation in these projects. They often are a big influencer of what we achieve as a council in terms of disadvantaged businesses. All of our projects so far that you'll hear updates on, we are exceeding, our project constructors or consultants are exceeding the goals, I believe, on all of them in terms of what I've set for DBE. And then we have some, we're making progress on the workforce goals on these projects. They're also huge employment for this region for constructing and building these. Over 80% of the counties in Minnesota have people that live in those counties that have worked on this project or are currently working on this project. Just some pictures. We like to show pictures as we make progress. Southwest Station at the far end in Eden Prairie, where we share a station with Southwest Transit, is nearing completion and turnover of the station to the bus operations back to Southwest Transit in the next month. So a lot of progress there. There's a park and ride for express bus and a park and ride for light rail. The Opus Station in Minnetonka, downtown Hopkins Station that you see in the lower right, that station very much looks done. It has lights. What you see in the background of these pictures too is the massive amount of development that is occurring around stations. On this project, over $2 billion of residential, real estate, commercial, and other development has either occurred or is permitted and under construction. So a lot of the cranes and work you see in this corridor are for development around the stations. It is transforming this corridor. Major bridges within this Excelsior Boulevard Bridge, it was just, the roadway underneath was open in the past year. They'll be putting track on this year on this bridge, one of the major kind of signature bridges within this project. Pictures within inside the tunnel. I cannot recommend enough a tour of this project to see what this tunnel and why this is a complicated tunnel. It's 65 feet below ground at the bottom, within a very narrow right-of-way within inches of houses, and an active railroad occurring that trains are running on all day long. So it's a very complicated project that when we're done, we will finish this project. It'll be great, but it's the driving force for our delays that we've incurred on this project. We have the season ahead. What we do in the spring, we'll have a public information about all the construction for the year on each of these projects that are in construction. And so more details in the next month about where road closures will be, what will be completed, what trails will be open, what will be closed. And that'll be rolling out this spring that we do to the communities and the property owners around the area. Council actions, there's a lot of council actions that are tied to these projects, and just some of the big ones that are coming up. There'll be a budget action in April to bring in some new federal funding into the project. We're awarding a cost estimating contract, we believe, in Q2. This is a very important step that has been tied to some of the issues we've had with, if you've seen in the news, related to a legislative audit, but also just the need to rebid this contract. And overall, we've had to redesign it and kind of do the contracts on this project, and so we've entered in some settlement agreements with the major contractors, and so they'll be wrapping up this year and getting that in place, which will be great. So there's a lot of detail behind this, but these are some major steps that will occur. So we will skip purple line and go back to engagement. So what we're going to do, I will be departing here, but the team that will introduce, they can answer any question you can ask. They're well-versed in these projects. This is more of a teaser to say that we're going to be coming to you with a lot of information. We are happy to set up one-on-one if there's any of these projects or within your districts to really get the background and details about this. And then, as I mentioned, there's the Transitway Advancement Policy that is going to be very important for understanding what risks these projects bring to the council that we need to manage and discuss. That was a big thing that was adopted last year that we're just starting to implement. And so we'll be back before you and talking about enterprise and project risks related to these projects. But I want to say welcome to the new members and thank you, and I apologize, but we have a great team here that'll be able to talk about the other projects, and we'll be back before you. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and we know we'll see you soon, and good luck this evening. And I would also second, when you are here, having one-on-ones and also tours are really valuable experience. Do you have a quick comment?
Just real quick, and I had mentioned this to Nick, so he knows I was going to ask this, but he's covered it. But I would just really emphasize for the new folks on the council that haven't had a briefing yet on our transit ways advancement policy. This came about, and I think a lot of it was because of the learnings from Southwest Light Rail. And I think it was the council's moment where we said, you know, we really need to understand what the risk is for the project as it moves throughout, you know, from the idea phase all the way to we might own and operate it phase. And so much has changed in the past several years. And, you know, with COVID and workforce and inflation and workforce change and all of it. And I really have to commend our team, because what they're doing is they're putting this into formulas and they're looking at the real hard data that we have here at the council, and they're putting it in a place where, as decision makers, this is just going to be some very good data that we have to look at to decide on all of these projects. At what moment do we say, nope, time out, can't go forward, or hey, need more time to work with you, partner, to analyze the risk between us here. And so you guys are drinking from a fire hose right now, but I would say in my first 4 years here at the council, we've done some really good things together as a group. But I really want to, you know, thank staff for all that they do every day. But this one thing, if you can get your head around it, you're going to need it here in about, I would say, a month or so as these come forward. And it's just super important, because it will, I think, help us be the partner that we need to be, and eventually maybe the owner of a system that we need to be, with our eyes wide open to things as they're coming at us.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Chambliss.
Thank you for those comments and your update, and I don't want to hold you if you have to go. I think we can take the Transitway Advancement Project and look at it as having more than just, you know, a risk analysis to it. Okay. How do we advance projects involves more than just that. It involves how can we position ourselves to make sure that our projects are successful as they move forward, to make sure, as Councilmember Johnson said, that we're able to maintain our systems and get them supported as they grow. It's also a way for us to look at how we can advance our projects for more equity, for more environmental options. That may not be in the first phase, but me being, you know, thinking about how we can continuously improve and being aspirational, I'd like to see it go a little bit further in terms of how we can advance our projects to meet our goals. The risk benefits analysis is important for almost any project. And our colleague expert here on risk benefit analysis that I've discovered, Deb Barber, can speak to that. So I'm really optimistic on how our communities are going to be benefiting from the Transit Advancement Project.
Jen.
If I, Mr. Chair, one of the things, not necessarily in the framework of the Transitway Advancement Policy, but at the same time as we're going through the work that we're doing on the regional framework, we're updating the Transportation Policy Plan. And that's really where that's a long-term plan that you instill some of those values into it. You can tell with some of the listening sessions we're having right now, those are the themes that are coming out as well with our local communities, and I think that's what our staff's been hearing a lot about as we kind of are building the framework for that specific document. And I think that is something that gets communicated really well to all our funders around the region. So, but that doesn't need you, Nick. I know you need to go. So.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Nick. And we're jumping to Gina. There you go. Welcome.
Chair, council members, my name is Sophia Guinness. I am Metro Transit's Director of Community Affairs, which oversees our outreach teams as well as our customer experience. You can refer to me as Sophia, and I use she, her pronouns. And so I'm going to be taking a step backwards a little bit and just giving you a little bit of the framework of the engagement that we put around these projects so you can understand how we do our work and how much we are dedicated to the community process in these big capital projects. You know, our communities care very deeply about all of them, and there are many decisions and choices along the way, and so the community engagement process really supports that process. And one of the fundamental pieces of that process is that we have outreach coordinators that are dedicated to each project. They are deeply, deeply embedded in the work. I can guarantee you that if these projects are in your district, you'll be meeting my staff at various times and will know them probably quite well. They are all fabulous people that care very deeply about the communities and care about people, and that's why we do the work that we do. And they work very, very closely with the project leadership that you see here. It's not, you know, separate people just doing stuff on the side, right? It is embedded in the work that we do, and engagement is designed into the processes and how we move these projects forwards. The outreach coordinators know the details, right? Because then they can bring feedback both out to the community in terms of explaining and helping kind of help folks understand our processes, but they also really are involved in all of the important project meetings. So they're acting as a vessel to our design, engineering, and environmental groups to elevate the voices of community and ensure that our decision-making is influenced by our riders and our community. And we take a very proactive approach. They're in these long, complicated projects. You hear things from community that you can't address until later. Construction is a great example of that. As you go into engineering, there's, you know, things that you continue to hear. So, you know, the team also really kind of tracks these issues with the project team. It helps us communicate, because if we've been asked something that we haven't been able to answer, we can anticipate that as we start to go forward into a next phase, and it makes the overall process hopefully more smooth. So, you know, we're committed to hearing what folks are saying and bringing them back and really carrying them through the life cycle of these projects. Outreach coordinators are there from the day that these get handed to the Met Council, more or less, till we open them. And, you know, part of our philosophy is to engage early and often. So all the project directors that you'll encounter, we want to make sure that the community is aware of project details and how they can be involved at various stages. What decisions are we making at these various phases? And to ensure that project directors and their staff are aware of community issues as well, so we can, again, address them proactively to the extent possible as we go through these projects. A little bit about our approach, and I know this is something that is important to this council, but the role of the team is really, really to do everything that we can to hear diverse perspectives, whether that's easy or not. And, you know, we use a variety of strategies to do that. So sometimes it is the more traditional method of hosting a meeting that you're inviting people to. That's a great way to ensure that everybody can come that wants to give you feedback. And our normal kind of communications ways of getting to people and continuing to innovate them. Like we do more videos than we did 5-ish years ago. We also really are working on kind of pushing that bounds of engagement to really hear from things. You'll hear from both of the folks here today a little bit about the innovative approaches that each of their projects has taken, but working with community partnership, really going where people are. We joke in the team that we really kind of track people down. We go and find them. And sometimes it takes, multiple attempts to talk to somebody. And it's really developing those ongoing working relationships with our neighbors and surrounding communities. I, for one, can basically close my eyes and walk through each of these project corridors and tell you the businesses and the residents and the people that are there. And they change, so you have to keep on top of it. But I mean, I really want to stress that our outreach coordinators get to know the community very, very well. I exchanged emails about gardening with folks that we did, an engagement on a while ago. So These are long-term relationships that benefit even the operations of our organization once it's going, and we are very committed, even when hard decisions are being made, to lead into those relationships and respect the people that we're interacting with. And ultimately, this brings greater understanding of our work and how we are making decisions. And so it helps us develop these projects in a way that supports our communities and responds to the desires that they'd like to see as we improve our transit system. There's specifics to each of these projects in terms of the engagement that we do, so I'm just going to give you a really high level for the presentation tonight. And basically, last year, between the 4 projects, even though Purple didn't get to present tonight, we had about 150 different public meetings. And that is, you know, you are there with a person. It might be virtual, right? You might be on a virtual call, but this is, you are talking to people in various settings. And that resulted in almost 10,000 individual contacts with people over the past year. If I had brought numbers in terms of how much our communications, overall communications and project communications reads, our flyering, our postcards, our construction bulletins, we start getting into the hundreds of thousands and even millions of contacts. So these get very well distributed into community. And you know, through these meetings, we also hear issues that we didn't anticipate. We meet new people that we have to have additional conversation with, and that is why part of our strategy tends to be adaptive, right? We set out with a plan, and then we might hear new things, and we bring that back and consider it. And so in these projects, setting stations and the details of stations are something that like a Purple Line is doing, is something that a Blue Line is also doing. The Blue Line extension also, in their previous phase, made big changes based on initial community feedback, looking at 21st Street or the extent between West Broadway. In our Green and Gold Line projects, both projects have leaned very heavily into making sure the community understands construction. It's a big deal when a road closes in front of you or dirt starts to get turned. So really having a very proactive communication with our communities and adjusting to what they want to hear about as well. So that is some of the background of what we do. So as you hear these details and these project developments, just know that there is a very intentional system in place to make these projects the best that they can be. And we often work in very close partnership with all of you in that community engagement process, and very much invite that as well. And
Mr. Chair, just a brief comment, please. I just want to really thank Sophia for the work that she does, and if those new council members who haven't experienced the engagement teams, she's not overselling. I mean, you do amazing work, and as someone who kind of stumbled into public life and policy making through my activism around planning of large projects, I just had this, you know, I was so frustrated. That's one of the reasons I decided to run for office. This can't be so difficult to understand, and you had to kind of fight your way into the conversation back in the day. But to see what these guys are doing, especially on the Blue Line, and I represent the parts of the Blue Line where the proposed design is changing the most radically, and the communities are very engaged and somewhat distrustful. And I know that Sophie does this, Sophia, and that Sam O'Connell before her would say, this project will move at the speed of trust. And you use the word trust as well tonight. And that is incredibly important work that they do very deliberately. And we're in a good place there with trust in the communities because of their work. And we need to protect that. And so I just want to say thanks and just make all the new council members especially aware. You'll get your chance to work with these incredible teams. And we're for a big organization, I think we're doing a great job of getting pretty granular and engaging communities.
Thanks for saying that. Thanks, Sophia. Alicia.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair, council members. My name is Alicia Vapp. I'm the project director for the Gold Line Bus Rapid Transit Project. And you can just call me Alicia, and I go by she, her pronouns. So I will kind of run through. So the Gold Line BRT project, as you kind of heard from Nick Thompson earlier, is part of our larger metro system. So it does connect, to a lot of local bus, a BRT, LRT, and the great thing about this project, the Eastern Metro, is really expected to continue to grow, to see population and employment grow. So it's an exciting time for this project. So a little bit more about this project. It's a frequent all-day service. The budget is $505.3 million. The corridor itself is about 10 miles. We're adding 16 new stations. Some of them are paired stations in downtown St. Paul. We're adding and purchasing 17 new BRT branded buses, similar to what you see on arterial BRT or Orange Line, Red Line. So out of the 17, 12 will be diesel and 5 are electric. So paired with the 5 electric, we're doing improvements to our East Metro bus garage in St. Paul, just north of downtown. We're adding some bus chargers and other improvements to accommodate the new buses, the new larger buses that are coming in. We have 3 new park and rides and 1 parking structure. Actually, one of those is an existing structure, or I'm sorry, an existing park and ride that we're using in Woodbury. And then we have 8 grade separated BRT crossings. So this project is in 3 different council districts, so 11, 12, and 13. So we're pretty lucky for this project. We have a wide variety of funding sources, lots of funds to manage. And so we have about $13 million in regional solicitation funds and about $252 million local funds. All of these are committed. The only thing we're waiting for is FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, recently told us on Monday, our federal grant, the $239 million, is imminent. That's their words, not mine. So hopefully that means any day now. And then where we are in our schedule. So we've come a long way with this project, and Chris Beckwith is actually the former project director, so she's also a wealth of knowledge and been very helpful as I've transitioned out to this project last year. But a lot of steps have been taken on this project, gone through a lot of engineering, environmental work, a lot of public outreach. We've been really fortunate to have the same outreach coordinator on this project pretty much from the beginning, and she's great and does a wonderful job, has built a lot of great relationships in the community. And so we're entering a new phase. We started construction last fall under a letter of no prejudice from the FTA, which just allows us to use federal dollars and get reimbursed. And our civil contractor is Ames Construction. They're doing a great job so far on schedule. They do a great job of communicating. They attend public meetings with us. It's been a really great transition. And so we do have a lot of work ahead of us as we, enter into the really heavy construction season this spring and summer. Been doing a lot of outreach, planning a lot of activities, meeting with neighbors, a lot of impacts like Sophia talked about. How do we get mail to a driveway if that mail box is blocked, and a lot of really, important details for those homeowners and business owners. The DB, Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Goal is an important aspect for this project. So we have 8 professional services contracts. They range from design and engineering contracts to legal services. And so those DBE goals range from 10% to 23%. We have 2 construction contracts, and those are at 11.6 and 17.11. The 17.11 is for the civil project, I'll just point out. All of our consultants and subcontractors are doing all of their reporting requirements. We're sharing that information with our partners at the FTA, and they are generally meeting or exceeding their commitments. We've been very happy with that work. So a couple pictures showing construction that started last fall. There's a couple of bridge construction projects that you might have seen if you've driven on the east side of the Metro on Interstate 94. So the image on the left is the Etna Bridge, and what you see here are some piers. And on the right, the Bielenberg Bridge in Woodbury, and you'll see that in the middle of the freeway and some work on the south of Interstate 94, and they're getting ready to start work on the north side of 94. And then additional photo showing, we demolished a few buildings in the Oakdale area at Helmo. So you see on the left that photo showing the building demolition. And now if you go out there, because this was taken a few weeks ago, looks very different, so it changes quickly. And then on the right, this again was a few weeks ago, and I just walked by the site this morning, and it looks very different. So this is 6 in Minnesota, just out here, and it's now, we're doing some utility work in this area. Now it's covered with fencing and all sorts of digging that's going on and excavation for some utility work. We have a parking structure in Woodbury, so that is a 3-level parking structure, 520 spaces. And in that facility, it's the end of the line, beginning of the line, however you determine where this line starts and ends. We have a bus operator facility and some storage space for our facility staff, so it's an important facility for our operators to have that, that space for end-of-the-line needs. And it was designed to meet the state's sustainable building guidelines, also known as B3. A couple renderings of our stations. One at the left is at the 3M campus. The Maplewood station, the rendering on the right, is in downtown St. Paul, just down the street at Union Depot and Wakuta. So a few business items that we're going to talk about in the 2023 look ahead. So as I mentioned, we're waiting for our full funding grant agreement from the FTA, and that is, as I said, imminent. We are working on title and possession of the needed right-of-way parcels, so we're pretty close. We have a handful of parcels that we still need to finish and close and take and get all those details worked out. There have been some utility work that's happened in Interstate 94, and that's for a regional transportation management center contract. So that's some early utility work that we've done. And then, as I mentioned, we're continuing to work on major civil project, continuing with our community engagement, which is an important piece of our project. We're actually in the process right now of doing a procurement to hire a contractor for the park and ride in Woodbury, the Woodland Park and Ride. So that's an active procurement right now. We opened bids the first week of April. And then we'll be working on a procurement to do landscaping for the entirety of the project that is not included in the civil contract. So a few items coming to you this year. As I mentioned, the Woodland Park and Ride project will be coming sometime in May or June. We've gotten a lot of questions from bidders, which is great. There's an interested community, so we're very pleased with that. We'll be working and bringing to you the landscaping contract award probably sometime in the fall. We work with MnDOT, as Nick mentioned, with our project setup. MnDOT is an important project partner. They're in our field office with our contractor and inspectors. They're also in our project office serving a variety of roles. So we'll be bringing a subordinate funding agreement so that the project itself pays for that staff time. So that will be coming this fall. And then if we do end up closing on any parcels over 1 million, we will be bringing those to the council for acquisition, for authorization for acquisition. I believe that's the last slide. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Move forward.
Can I ask a question? So I'm in the new council member of District 12. So when does the first bus go? What's the timetable for completion?
Council member and Chair, thank you for that question. So 2025, sorry, I should have covered that. I was trying to go pretty quickly, so 2025, early 2025.
Perfect. And if there's an opportunity to have a tour or something, just
I would be happy, yep, we'd be happy to accommodate that.
Thank you.
Question.
All right. Mr. Chair and council members, my name is Chris Beckwith. I'm the project director for the Blue Line Extension Light Rail Transit Project. You can call me Chris, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm going to do the speed round today because I know we want to get to your questions as well. So the Blue Line Extension is actually in the engineering phase. So when Nick showed you kind of the phases they go through, project development, engineering, construction, Alicia just covered a project and construction, we are actually technically in the engineering phase. And to get into the engineering phase, you need to complete your environmental work. You need to get your final environmental impact statement, which the Blue Line did in July of 2016 on a previous alignment.
So actually, in August of 2020, after many years of trying to negotiate with BNSF to use the freight rail property, the project partner, so Met Council, and our county partner decided to pivot and select a new alignment. And that was recommended in June of last year. So June of 2022, we had a modified route. You can see the photo here, probably not very well. The very bottom of that, and Sophia touched on this a little bit, there are a couple of options still in Minneapolis. So even though we've got a general alignment selected, there's still some decisions we need to make in Minneapolis. So it's located fully in Hennepin County through 4 communities, Minneapolis, Robbinsdale, Crystal, and Brooklyn Park. We do have to now amend that final environmental impact statement that was completed in July of 2016. We're going to build upon that and first complete a supplemental draft environmental impact statement, which is an SDEIS, and then a final version of that document as well. We have extensive public engagement, as Sophia also mentioned, and including an anti-displacement work group, which is a new thing for us here in the region. We hope to have a policy recommendation on those where we've got a couple of options in Minneapolis, and then a few other questions that we want to answer throughout the corridor as well. Every transitway has its story. Blue Line's story is equity. This line is all about equity, and we're thrilled to be moving this project forward as a project team and have some great relationships with our communities as well. So we don't have construction photos. We don't have a cost estimate. We have a schedule, approximate schedule. We don't have a project rating. We are working on all of that design, the environmental, the engineering to get you those facts as we move forward in this project. Typically, New Starts, the Capital Investment Grant Program, New Starts projects take about 7 years if everything goes right, 7 to 9 years. So I'm just going to focus here on the section that we're in, which is going through that environmental review, and we will get municipal consent. We will request municipal consent from our 4 cities about this time next year. And we are working on engineering and stationary planning as well. And then after this, we'll move into the final design. And I'm going to get to that in a couple of slides. As I mentioned, the status in the FTA's CIG program, we are in engineering, but we're kind of taking a little bit of a step back to do the environmental work for our new alignment. So our capital cost is to be determined still. The funding request of the FTA, the project rating, all of that will come. The next steps are then to advance the environmental and the engineering, request that project rating, and then update our risk assessment. And I'm going to talk about a consultant that we hope to get on contract to do that. Quickly on our DBE update, you can read most of these bullets here, but the last couple just show that on average, we have an average goal on our project of 18.6% or 22.5 million, and we are actually delivering a 20.4% or 23.5 million. So really having success in our DBE program and look to continue that as well. I've got a few photos, so no construction photos, but I do have some photos of outreach and adapting our approach. What we're trying to do, Sophia talked about this too, we will find the community members, and we've had a lot of success in the last several months, especially in connecting with the community members. We know that because now we're getting the right questions back. They're feeling informed enough to tell us these are the things that are important to us. So we're really getting that feedback loop, which is excellent. So here's a few photos of us going to their driveways, of us having our traditional open houses, and then our anti-displacement work group as well. The look ahead in 2023, I think I mentioned most of these things, but the anti-displacement work group, they're getting ready to present their policy recommendations to our corridor management committee. So we think that'll happen, well, that will happen in the spring, possibly in the May timeframe. The CMC corridor management committee recommendation on our preferred alignment, as I mentioned, would be summer. We would complete 30% design in the fall, and that's what we use for the municipal consent process, so that will kick that off in the fall. Publishing that SDEIS document is late 2023, and then municipal consent next year. To get all of this work done and to keep on track and moving forward, there will be some business items coming before the council, and 3 of them very soon, actually. 3 professional services contracts. They even have business item numbers that are listed here. Engineering services, which is preliminary and final design and developing those construction plans. project management services, and included in this is cost estimating, scheduling, project controls, as we call it. That is separated from the design work in the first contract. And then the third one is the risk management services contract, also separated from the prior two, because that consultant can actually do oversight work on the other two contracts. So we've got some checks and balances in here that we think is a really successful approach to this, and will really allow us to make sure to manage those risks going forward. The last one here is, we have one more funding agreement that would come this year, a capital grant agreement with Hennepin County and the Hennepin County Regional Railroad Authority, and that is for funding the project through the kind of the engineering phase. So it'll be kind of through 2025 is our intent with that. We will also include in that document, there'll be terms in there on managing our financial risk, the governance that Nick talked about earlier, and then process. So we're having really great negotiations with our Hennepin County partners, and that will be moving forward in the coming months as well. So I wanted to talk about like the timeline here for these three contracts, just to kind of let you know where we've been and where we're headed. So we actually advertised the RFP, the request for proposals. We advertised that last summer, before the transit advancement risk policy was before you. So we started this process, it was over 6 months ago now. It's one RFP, we divided into 3 parts, and we said we would issue 1, 2, or 3 contracts, depending on what the proposals look like. And we did get good response on the proposals, and we are going to pursue 3 contracts, kind of providing that those checks and balances that I had mentioned. It took us last year to evaluate those proposals. We did our negotiations on the costs in the first quarter of this year, and then soon we will be bringing those business items back to the Transportation Committee and the Council. You see the red dot in the middle, we're stopping. We stop, we come back to you, we talk about the questions you have, and then you let us know if we're ready to proceed. After that, we would issue limited notices to proceed. So we are not saying go do the rest of the work all the way through construction. We are saying do the design and engineering work, get this through the engineering phase. That's approximately 2023 to 2025. So there'll be a LNTP for that phase, and then another stop sign. Then we come back to you before we head into construction, before we would request the full funding grant agreement from the FTA. So there's another check here on whether this body wants us to proceed with this project. So that I just wanted to explain that timeline as well. That's the last slide I have, so I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not so much a question, but just a couple of general comments. Number one, I don't know how you got through that many slides that fast, so way to go.
Kind of the purple line.
Yeah, quite impressive. But I do, for the new council members, and especially those who are joining Transportation Committee, you will see this team often, this crew of people in front of the committee. I really cannot speak highly enough about some of our engagement work, and especially the anti-displacement work we're doing on the Blue Line and our project teams. These directors are amazing, and they know their stuff. If you've got questions, call them up. They will get into the weeds and give you all the answers you need. Again, very much recommend go take tours of all of these corridors. Especially you go like out in the Green Line and you think, well, there's some building going on. Go out on the Green Line and you'll see that, on the extension there, it's a lot of the civil construction is done. And it really is important to kind of see that piece. And then the other thing I would say, as Councilmember Johnson mentioned, we have the Transitway Advancement Policy, which is a new thing for us as a council. And as we start moving these projects through, we're going to start having these conversations. But no, we're actually kind of working through how we're going to do it at the same time as we're starting to apply it. So if you've got questions, you want to talk about it, have suggestions, ideas, by all means, please reach out, because I think it would be very helpful. Because, it's like we don't know how to frame some of the conversations properly on each of these steps yet. We know what we wanted to do with the intention of it, but we want to make sure we're applying it the right way. So there'll be a lot of discussions over the next couple of months about this. The projects that will be most likely the ones that we work on is the Blue Line extension, just because of where it's at in the process. But yeah, if you've got comments or thoughts or want to learn more, just by all means, please reach out.
Great, Councilmember Lilligren.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to lift up the anti-displacement work, and Councilmember Barber mentioned it, but it is really an adaptation and innovation. One of the things that has always concerned me about these huge infrastructure investments, and in the community I live in, the communities that I've represented, there's often a sense or a feeling that this investment is meant for whoever comes next, and that the investment will create so much value to the land that it displaces them, and people with more resources or more wealth come in and benefit from this investment. And this anti-displacement work is a very deliberate effort to not let that happen, and it has engaged the community so robust. I can't believe the people that are working on this anti-investment, the community people are committing full days to working on this, and it's just drawing a lot of attention. And at a number of tables I'm at, people are talking about it. I mean, the people are noticing it. It doesn't really happen on these big projects. We're really trailblazers on this. And as we come to the recommendations this spring, and I've said this at the Corridor Management Committee as well, but then we're starting to talk about the resources. How do we fund the anti-displacement strategies? And of course, it's not just us. It's local communities, it's private sector, it's other sources, but really that's where the rubber meets the road. And are we willing to, and how are we going to fund and invest in the anti-displacement strategies? I'm looking forward to that.
It's pioneering new ground. It's got a lot of federal attention. Yeah. Judy, then
You
Councilmember Barber.
just said what I was going to say, that it's capturing a lot of national attention.
Oh, I read your brain just to
there
say
you go.
that.
You
got a lot.
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, and Mr. Chair, I just want to echo, get out on a tour, Councilmember Vento, and I think along with Councilmember Barber, Wolf, and yes, there was a bunch of us on the southwest, and I mean, it was incredible to know that where they're building the tunnel, there are divers in water, because it's being constructed between two water bodies, so think about that. And it gives you a whole different perspective than even if you are driving by it, as was mentioned. I would also say and challenge everybody, because it was Councilmember Wolf that challenged me to go on a ride-along with Metro Transit Police Department. I did that last fall with Sergeant Ibrahim. In fact, he was here tonight. We're going to go grab coffee and stay in touch. And Carol with Metro Transit PD helped pull together some listening sessions that were held maybe late last summer, early fall. I think the weather was still nice out. And it's really important, and especially with our new chief, to really understand what they're going through out there. We have an authorized strength of 170 in the budget, and I think there may be 105, 10 right now.
109.
109. So imagine the challenges that are out there, and these are societal challenges that are showing up on our transit system, and they're out there every day working so hard and very dedicated, and they will happily bring you on a ride-along, get you up to the stations, and then just yesterday, I was able to go on a ride-along with an operator. So Roland allowed me to get in the cab with him, and then Mark, the director of light rail, was there, and then Captain Raymond was there, and I got to see firsthand what was going on the Blue Line. So I had, we know that there are problems, challenges. We've gotten some briefings recently for the new folks of some of the efforts that we're trying to make out there. It was sobering. It's something I recommend that you all do, because you get some time with people that do this every day of their lives, and the things that they see and the compassion that they have. And they come to work every day with a smile on their face. I met a bunch of operators coming and going, ready to get on the trains. They are wonderful people. And I couldn't, thank them enough for what they were doing. And with that said, it's very eye-opening, because we're in the news. You can see it, WCCO ran a story last night. There was a Ward 9 meeting last night, which I saw on Twitter play out, because I follow people that are transit advocates. And I thought, just based on that, our chief and Leslie was there as well, did a very good job. But this is going to be a coming together. This is not, a police chief isn't going to solve this decision here. This is comprehensive because of the horrible things that our people in our society are faced with addiction, mental illness, homelessness, and they become prey on our trains. So I just want to say, while we are building these out, we have to then, as we own and operate them, understand what we're going through now as we continue to add on new assets into the system. And I would just say that And I'm just going to be blunt, you know, when you're looking at the stations, especially along Franklin and Lake, you will see all kinds of orange plastic things. Those are Hennepin County needles from their needle exchange program. There's a cute little box that they've put on a fence way down the way, which would probably fill up in 2 hours. But it's strewn, so it's dangerous out there for people that are walking and just trying to manage it. And these beautiful facilities that had wonderful ribbon cuttings not that long ago are in rough shape because every day we're trying to, you know, make them be beautiful and presentable. But when you show up or other people show up to take a look at what's going on, they don't really understand, I think, the magnitude of that. It's not a transit line that's causing the problem. It is the problems that exist in our region, in our communities, in our state, across the nation, which I believe has only been exacerbated by COVID, and the disparities are growing. And we need our partners. We need our counties. We need our cities. We need social services, we need healthcare. Officers will try to assist, and where do they bring them? Do they bring them to Hennepin County? They come and go out of there pretty fast. The minute they can bundle them up, they're back on the street and they're back on the trains. If there are offenses, drug dealing is taking place. I have less sympathy for drug dealers than I do for the people who are addicts. But even there, if they are not prosecuted, they're turned around and they're released within 2 hours and they're back. Their cars are parked at the bottom of the stations, and people come, and it's cyclical. So, you know, as I mean, I got to thinking, you know, there almost needs to be a summit. We all have conversations going on. We all have pieces of this in our lives that we're trying to manage too. We're certainly very focused on it with our new safety plan here. But it's bigger than one agency. And we know this. I think other agencies know it. But unless there's a real coordinated effort, people are falling through the cracks. So while we celebrate all of this, there's humanity that's taking place. And I just want to recognize the heroic work that everybody at the council does, and then particularly yesterday, because again, I was out with PD and the operators, and also seeing the nerve center where they're managing all this. That's just next level. So when you hear about all these things, it becomes so vivid in your mind when you've had a couple hours out on a line and talking to the people who are experiencing it every day. And again, I will say that as they describe the huge challenges they face, and they're horrible. I wouldn't want that job. But they're very positive oriented in it and dedicated to helping the people and making sure that we get riders back on transit that are very uncomfortable right now because they don't feel safe. So I wanted to share that because I know people inspired me to make my appointments and get out there, and it's life-changing. So hopefully you'll take advantage of that.
Thank you, Judy. And Sophia, Alicia, Chris, thank you so much. I know it's already been said, so I'll just confirm how much we appreciate everything you're doing. You know, there was a time when the Met Council would spend 10 years on one transitway project. Now we have many in different stages, and you kind of exemplify that work. We're at time, but I want to give us an opportunity for some reports. Really appreciate what Councilmember Johnson just said. We're going to have more time talking about safety and the interagency group. We're working with the governor's office on actually trying to get a little bit more of a comprehensive look. We're working certainly with the MAC, also very clued in, but this is beyond any one agencies, but we had to do our part. So I really kind of hats off everybody who's engaged in this work, because it's not easy, and we'll read about in the media. It's easy to write about, but this is a challenge, both urgent in the near term and in the long term, and we have our work cut out for us. But as I think Tony Carter said to me earlier, what an honor that we're on the front row of these really important generational issues. So that's what we get to do. Does any other reports, or John and
Just quickly, I attended my first, as co-chair, member of the Equity Advisory Committee. We met last night, and we had a presentation from the Equity Task Force within the staff, and they made a presentation, and the discussion is, how are we defining, what is our definition of equity going into the 2050 plan here, 2050 plan. And so it's, we're still down two council members, so if we can get that appointed, anybody's interested. They meet on Tuesdays, but it's like 6 to 8 at night. And they're very passionate. Size team organizes it. We had a great discussion, and so and as we go forward, if we're going to hold other people accountable for their equity reports and what they're doing, they really need to understand ours. And so I think that I expressed that to the people that were there, the advisory members there. They're willing to take that on, and so I'm just encouraging anybody who wants to join us, do that. And again, I think the equities, I don't know how many times it's been mentioned today, not just the golf course, but others across our reports. We need to be consistent on how we do that.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, John. Deb?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you all know and have heard, last weekend was, on the 18th was Transit Driver Appreciation Day, and a number of our celebrations we had today because it was on a weekday, so we have full staff. So Councilmember Wolf and I spent the lunch hour at South Garage serving lunch, but I know some of the other council members were out at facilities and participating. It's so important for our operators to know how much we support them and to hear their stories and to visit with them. So I just want to give a thank you for anyone who took some time and made it out to a facility today. It's very, both council members and staff, it's very much appreciated, and I can tell you they really appreciate when we show up. So.
Really important. Thank you for highlighting that, and thanks for everybody who's been involved. Any other thoughts, questions, reports? Tyrone?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I did go down to the Green Line Operations and Maintenance Facility, and it was amazing. As a young kid, I was fascinated with trains, probably still am, because when you're little, a big train is like a dinosaur, and it was amazing for me as a kid to be able to go downtown and get on a public transportation when I was 8 years old. Of course, if my 8-year-old son did that, I would be very upset when he done that. But it was just nice to meet the people and get their input and feedback on their jobs. It seems like there was, as someone has already said, there was a high level of satisfaction. It seems in camaraderie and teamwork. And, and that's something we can all take a page from. We can disagree on 10 things, but there are probably 4 things we can agree on and maybe compromise on the rest. And so I enjoyed that today, and I made sure I didn't eat too much. They had a lot of food over there, too.
Hey, thanks for being there. I certainly have a childhood memory of my father took me on a train trip from Minneapolis to St. Paul, and now I can do it every 15 minutes. Right? Our regional administrator.
I'm going to pass, Mr. Chair.
All right, Chief Counsel.
Mr. Chair, normally I would pass. You heard a lot from me today, though, and so I think you need to have a little bit of background on who I am, because otherwise you're just being asked to blindly follow what I say, which is good advice. I've been practicing law for 29 years. I've been in the public sector for 22 years. I've been at the council for over 13 and a half years. It'll be 6 years this summer that I've been general counsel, and I've worked on the Southwest, our Metro Green Line Extension project since 2011. So I like to say I'm 2 miles wide and 2 inches deep, so I can't always answer your questions. In the meeting, I have a really good staff of attorneys who get into more of the details of things. But one of the important things that I think you've all learned is that the council is a political subdivision and a public corporation that was created by the legislature. And we are given those powers that the legislature has given to us. And today we had a really good example of that discussion of, what are the corners of our authorities. And I just want you to know that staff are really aware of that in all of the different areas that they practice in. And we have those discussions with them on a daily basis so that when things get to you, you don't have to worry typically about, what are the 4 corners. But I think that's really important, and we are certainly here to have those discussions with you. And I just really appreciated the discussion tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, on that note, we went a little over, but what a robust set of conversations. And this is a very exciting council and really interesting issues in front of us. So stay tuned. We'll see you soon. This meeting is adjourned.